Hey, it's me, your boy Blue Gets again. Today we'll be doing a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tier analysis video, and we're going to be starting off with Abyss Actors. So let's get started. Abyss Actors are an Art 5 archetype, and they're pendulum based. And they also revolve around certain spell cards called scripts. For the pros, they have great boss monsters, is also really consistent, they can float, and they can OTK, especially with their new cards. Like if you let Superstar go off in the deck, they could really mess you up. This deck can snowball advantage pretty easily, especially if you manage to get the setup where your opponent is forced to destroy your spells and traps. Then you could just basically draw a bunch of cards and make your opponent have a really bad day. This deck also has really great spells and traps. I'm not sure why I put decent. I guess I put decent because 50% of their spells and traps are garbage, and the other 50% are absolutely beastly. Next for the cons, we have Master Rule 4, Master Rule 5. Because of that, you can't really pendulum summon as many Abyss Actors as you'd want, but at this point that would probably be very OP, since this deck can already OTK as is, and already swarm. Also, this deck requires a lot of effort, a lot of setup for the spell effects. Like I mentioned, some of the scripts, when destroyed, they actually have effects, but you have to have an Abyss Actor face up in your extra deck, which is actually fairly easy to do now. I mean, even before the new support, it was somewhat easy, but still required quite a bit of setup. It required you to have your Abyss script on face down. It also required for your opponent to, run back row removal, which people don't do as much now. And I guess the only way for you to actually get an Abyss Actor face up in the extra deck consistently is with extras, like Abyss Actor extras. But now it's way easier than even before, because now you have ways to search your Abyss Actors, a lot easier extras. Basically puts itself in an extra deck to get your Bella Madonna. Not Bella Madonna, but I think Madonna. I forgot what their searcher was, their 0 scale. And yeah, basically you could just go off from there. You could search your Superstar or any of your other combo pieces. And on top of that, they even have a really neat field spell that basically allows you to search, I think, even more Abyss scripts, which is pretty nice. As well as force your opponent to actually pop your Abyss scripts if they activate certain effects. So basically, you don't have to rely on your opponent running spell and trap removal as much as they used to. Anyways, for the stats, I'd give this deck a 3.5 out of 5 when it comes to power, because this deck can clear boards and actually, wow, I'm brain farting a lot today. Because this deck can clear boards as well as OTK pretty easily, especially with their new support. For defense, I'd give this a 2.5 out of 5 because this deck can float and they do have decent defense. Plus, the pendulum mechanic in itself is already floaty in nature. For recovery, I'd give this deck a 3 out of 5 because they're pendulums. Recovering is just in their nature. For versatility, a 2.5 out of 5 because this deck actually has, their Abyss scripts actually provide several strategies. Not too many, but enough to where they can actually get you out of really messy situations. And for consistency, I'd give this deck a 3.5 out of 5 due to their search power. So overall, I'd actually say that this deck is a tier 2.5 because this deck actually, it's actually really strong now. Not strong enough to be a meta contender, but strong enough to where you can actually surprise someone with it. Next, we have Mecha Phantom Beast. Oh boy. For the pros, this deck has good monsters. Like their main deck monsters are pretty good, and so are their extra deck monsters. They can swarm, I guess to specify, they can swarm tokens. As far as like their as far as their non-token Mecha Phantom Beasts, not so much. And that's pretty much my only issue I have when it comes to swarming, because like a lot of your boss monsters, they're fairly hard to get into since this deck is fairly normal summon reliant, and a lot of their combo pieces, combo in quotes, they're not searchable. So there's that. I would say this deck has decent defense because they spawn tokens as well as the monsters. The main deck monsters themselves cannot be destroyed as long as you have a token. They can be removed via many other ways, but they have that going for them. Plus, you can also run. I forgot the name of the card, but you basically target like a very weak monster with a certain stat, and you get to draw a card, and that monster cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effect. But I just forgot what it's called. And I'm not talking about that one card used. I'm talking about like this older card. And I used to play it in Mecha Phantom Beasts. Anyways, for the cons, this deck lost their Link 3. Honestly sucks. Like that Link 3 honestly made this deck way more playable than it actually was before. But because it got abused in other decks, it naturally got banned. And I understand why they wouldn't want to unban that card ever. So, kinda sucks. Kinda sucks. This deck only has one O-line. Because even when they had 3 O-line and they didn't have the Link 3, this deck was still struggling. But now it only has one O-line. I'm not sure why Konami didn't just put O-line to 3. Yeah, I don't know. Like, they should just put it to 3 immediately. I don't know what they were thinking putting it to 1. This deck lacks search power. They only have one search card, and it only searches Mecha Phantom Beast monsters. And it's in the form of Raptor, I think. Yeah, Raptor. And that's only when a token is spawned, so it's not even a free search. Which I wish more archetypes had less free searches, but anyway, so it's not even a free search. You basically have to normal summon it. This deck is also fairly normal summon reliant, and then you also have to find a way to spawn a token, which there are ways, like, I forgot the name of the card, but it was like a continuous trap, but the only thing that sucks about it is you have to tribute a token or destroy the card itself, so it wasn't really that great of a card. But yeah, that's the only way you could search in this deck, to my at least to my recollection. This deck lacks the power to OTK. Like, the closest thing you can do to OTK in this deck is just use United We Stand. So, that's not all that great. And this deck usually can't play through more than one interruption. Also, going second feels bad. Because, yeah, imagine going second with Mecha Phantom Beasts. You're not going to have a good time. For power, I'd give this deck a 2 out of 5. For defense, a 2.5 out of 5. For recovery, a 1.5 out of 5. Why? Because, yeah, this deck doesn't really have that many combos, and on top of that, this deck really relies on you using other cards to spawn tokens and do things with said tokens. Plus, the whole gimmick is your main deck monsters, their levels change depending on how many tokens are in the field. And you generally need 2 Mecha Phantom Beast main deck monsters and a token to actually do something. So, yeah. I mean, you could stay in the game, but that's about it. For versatility, a 2.5 out of 5, and for consistency, a 2 out of 5. due to the lack of searchability, but they do have draw cards they can work with. Also, I said that defense has a 2.5 out of 5 because although they have the protection that tokens provide them as well as like their main deck monsters effects that protect them from destruction if they control a token. Protection from destruction isn't really all that great, especially in modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Like there's many forms of monster removal that don't destroy. So there's that. So overall, I'd actually say that this deck is a 3.5. It's a tier 3.5. Anyways, next and lastly, we have Vendreads. And Vendreads are, I think this was it was an Arc 5 archetype. I mean, what obviously wasn't used in the anime, but this archetype I think premiered in Arc 5. And there is a zombie ritual deck that's based on Resident Evil as well as shit. Because normally, like around that time, TCG exclusives they like to focus on two themes. For example, with Kaiju's, it was basically like the Godzilla thing, as well as Pacific Rim. And with Cosmo was Star Wars and Wizard of Oz, which very, very odd choice. So I forgot which two franchises Vendreads were based off of. All I know is they're based off of Resident Evil, but they're supposed to be based off of something. Oh, Spawn. Right. Based off of Resident Evil and Spawn.
For realsies!
Anyways, let's get started. For the pros, they have good monsters. They have great spells and traps, with the exception of their traps. Like, half their traps are like decent, but they're pretty slow, when especially for a ritual archetype. This deck is consistent, especially with their newer support, because their new support actually their new support is basically just pure consistency. Like their new ritual spell allows you to special summon a Vendread monster from your deck and then immediately ritual summon using it. So you could basically special summon your Vendread Scars. From your deck and then immediately tribute it to ritual summon your Slayer, and then Scars will just search you your other ritual spell, or you can basically use Vendread Evolution to send your Scars to the graveyard and then special summon your Slayer and then basically get a search that way as well, and then you can search the new Vendread ritual spell and then use it for a place later. Or you can normal summon, or you could just, after ritual summon your Slayer, you could just normal summon a Vendread monster, then just link off into your Link monster, and then Slayer sends a ritual monster from your... I don't think it has to be a ritual monster. Basically, a Vendread monster to your graveyard, and I think you can add something to your hand. Oh, I think it's a ritual spell you can add to your hand. So that's also pretty nice as well. Also, this deck is fairly versatile because now you can beat over, like in case you struggle with monsters that can't be affected by monster effects, you have cards like Scavenger, as well as you have many different means of actually dealing with your opponent's, I guess, deck. Because you have Chimera, which honestly sucks, but it helps you negate, I think, summons. Yeah, it helps you negate summons as well as you have cards like Battle Lord, which helps you negate certain types of effects on your turn. And then you also have your individual Vendread monsters, which give your Vendread ritual spells, not ritual spells, ritual monsters added effects when used for ritual summons. While on field, I can understand why they placed that restriction, because around the time Vendreads came out, would you really trust people not to break the fact that you could just give... I mean, would you really expect people not to just basically consistently put out boards of Vendread ritual monsters that can easily just incorporate the effects and monsters you used for the ritual summon. I guess it's basically a product of its time, kind of like kaiju's. Anyways, this deck can float because a lot of them they actually have graveyard effects. Like I think all the rituals except for Chimera have graveyard effects, and then so does Vendread Scars, as well as yeah, I think even like your ritual spells, or no, it was only one of the ritual spells that floated, and that was the original one, and that functions more as protection, but it's welcomed protection. Also, this deck has generic zombie support to work with, so there's also that. And for the cons, they usually can't play through 3+ interruptions. For the additional con, Macro and D Fisher are now at 3, and you should actually expect people to be playing that card. Yeah, you should be expecting people to be playing that card a lot more. Also, Bestials exist, so have fun. Anyways, for the stats, I'd give this deck a 3 out of 5 in power, a 2 out of 5 in defense, a 3 out of 5 in recovery, a 3.5 out of 5 in versatility, and a 3.5 out of 5 in consistency. So overall, I'd say that this deck is a tier 3 deck. It's way better than it was before. Still has some of its issues, but it's actually way more consistent now. Anyways, tell me what you guys think about these 3 archetypes. Also, tell me which of these 3 archetypes are your personal favorites. And to me, your boy Blue Gets guy, and I'm out.